All right, what's up, everybody? It is Zombies here again, and today we have the first episode of our new Mercenaries podcast, The Fighting Pit. And I am joined by my two co hosts here, Mullahoo and Tangster. Y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, howdy. So my name's Steve Mullahoo. I've been playing Hearthstone since basically my friend showed it to me in beta on his iPad back at school, and I've been streaming it since actually just about exactly about a year now. But so played it pretty competitively for many years, fully free to play. I'm still fully free to play.
Nice.
But then I've played Magic for 20 years. I've coached League of Legends before. I've kind of then those are really my big three games. So Halo Infinite just came out. We're playing a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
no, definitely mostly Magic, mostly Hearthstone, mostly League. That's my big trifecta.
Very cool. What about you, Tangster?
Yeah, so I'm Rob Tangster Wildeman. I am kind of the opposite of Mullahoo here, except that I've been playing Hearthstone since literally day one, completely by accident. Mercs, day one, completely by accident as well. Fell in love with both. Have been a Blizzard fan since like Diablo 2, Warcraft
Ooh.
3 era.
Old school.
But I am what I think Blizzard probably refers to internally as a giant whale. Playing so long that it really feels like once you have a little extra cash, you're not 16 anymore, and you
Yep,
can
that's
do the
relatable.
things that you enjoy. Besides that, it's Binding of Isaac, those type of roguelites I'm a big fan of. Super
Great
excited.
games.
The new Pokemon Diamond Pearl release. Huge fan of Pokemon. And been losing a lot of Halo Infinite too.
Let's
I,
go.
I definitely have that boomer FPS,
Very
problem where
relatable.
back in Halo 2, no problem. Halo Infinite, these kids are fast, man.
Yeah, dealing with all the Zoomers now, right? They got
Yeah,
those
it's Zoomers
those
on
skills.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a coincidence.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely same kind of way. Like I've been playing Hearthstone since just before Nax was when I first started playing that, and you are among fellow sea mammals. I have definitely spent way too much money on this game that I've played for like 7 or 8 years now. It's kind of crazy when you think about it like that, but I've gotten just thousands of hours of enjoyment out of the game. So I just don't see anything wrong with throwing some money back into it. Like definitely, my my biggest like complaint slash hope from like those little AMAs Ixar does on Twitter sometimes. I think like a long time ago he mentioned they might do something where you can like upgrade a regular card to a golden card without like having to fully craft it like, and I'm just like please because I'm like a fiend for if I really love a deck, especially like wild deck, I like having it all out in gold, and that can get a little expensive.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm also a fan of Pokemon. I'm super duper pumped for the stuff tomorrow, and I've been playing some Halo Infinite as well. That's been like super duper fun, and they just kind of made the Battle Pass thing a little bit better today, so that was nice to see. But
Good to know.
we are not a Halo Infinite podcast, though. So, focus of what we're going to be doing here on this podcast is we want to be a podcast focused on the PvP and competitive aspects of Mercenaries. There's been just a whole ton of support from the community for a lot of community-driven events like tournaments just in this first like month or so after release, and I think it's really awesome to see. Like I think it says a lot of promising things for like the future of the game. Seeing that much like support early on when it's still kind of in its beginnings and they're still kind of feeling the footing out for what they want to do with the mode long term.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's something that I have been steadfast and determined to make a message of as every single second that I can possibly make it is that to me, this game is just the living embodiment of an infinite ceiling. The fact that we busted out so much cool stuff so quickly, literally faster than Blizzard, I think, could handle or expected to handle, and just without even trying, you can come up with one more, two more, three more, four more super duper cool ideas for whether it's a competitive format, whether it's new mercenaries, whether it's a way to balance mercenaries, whether it's a way to do new PvE content, to expand the village that you're in, to level. I mean, it's the list goes on and on and on, and I think for that reason, again, I think I speak for all of us when we say that now is honestly the best time. There's no better time, right, to get in while the getting is good, and mercenaries is just going to get bigger and bigger. There's so much obvious stuff to do that seems implementable, right? That actually seems achievable, that I think we're going to try to act as an anchor for everyone else to both get into the game competitively, to keep up with the game competitively, because there is so much stuff that is just moving on a daily basis. And then this stagger step nature of, if you want to play something cool, you have to wait to level it up. So being up on everything, I think, is actually a really valuable just hub of information to have right now. And I am just super excited, yeah, that I think we're going to be able to be a touchstone of competitive mercenaries, honestly, at least a weekly update for you.
Absolutely, and I think we have three really great points of view here that we can offer. And I know for a fact, Mullahoo and I have been talking a little bit in Discord, and we already have a little some disagreements about how some of the buffs went. So you guys, you'll be able to get not just the filtered insights, right? You'll get all of it and
Live.
Alive, exactly.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So in terms of recent events, we did just have the Invitational go by, and I thought even with there were some technical hiccups, but it's not too surprising when you do consider that this event is dealing with people from all 4 different servers, and you can definitely have some complications when you're dealing with like kind of cross-play, cross platform stuff like that. It can be a little dicey at times. Definitely kind of know that, but other than that, the event was really great. It was awesome. Like I really loved getting to see all the formats of Hearthstone kind of be implemented in the tournament. I feel like it gave everyone kind of a reason to watch, no matter like what you enjoy most about the game. There was something there for everybody. So I think that was really great, and I think someone on Twitter called it like the Olympics of Hearthstone, and I really liked that because it felt like all these different modes, and being on teams together, it kind of binded the modes together, even though they aren't really like related to each other or like relative to each other. Like they're so differently played and they don't have any weight normally versus the other modes. But in this event, like it actually like they each mattered to contribute to like a greater whole, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, like you said with the Olympics, just real quick, that yeah, honestly, I think that to kind of just tie into what we were talking about too in terms of like community, or like the public perception of community tournaments, or just tournaments and mercenaries period right now, is that I would say that the community that wants to play competitively is still just like a little, it's just underdeveloped, but like almost a little salty, in the same way that like there was this degree of saltiness with the invitational mercenary stuff. Like everything is just still like not really, it's just growing pains, right? Like we're still just
sure.
in, the game's been out for a month,
Yeah,
and like
4
less than a
weeks.
week,
Yeah.
and we're already like, I mean, we're just getting ahead of ourselves, honestly. I think when we're saying that like, oh, this giant tournament had issues with it, or like like how many multiple tournaments have already happened in a month. So like I think
For sure.
I'm gonna already take back my statement and say, if anything, we should just see this as a really hopeful, positive sign. But it does still feel like we're trying to figure stuff out. And honestly, the fact that the Invitational was still trying to figure stuff out too just shows how difficult and complex of a problem this is going to be. But it really feels fixable. It really feels solvable.
I think the takeaway from the Invitational is that Blizzard is going to be supporting Mercenaries as an esport, maybe not necessarily as a main event, but we see that Blizzard is willing to support it. Sure, we had some technical issues. Sure, we can talk about how the meta isn't really conducive in that tournament to amateurs trying to, break into that scene. But to Mullahoo's point, it's been out a month, and we've already had the first sponsored Blizzard tournament. That is incredible. How long has Battlegrounds been out now?
Yeah, right.
Did it take us, to see it on an international stage at Blizzard supported? And, I don't want to... The Invitational was really, really big. It was really fun to watch, but that's almost kind of burying the lead about all of the other community-run tournaments that have gone on. We had the No Pros here on like day 3 of launch. We had the ATK Battle for the Bounty, both the Americas and EU. Currently, just kicked off Monday, the Coin Concede Listener Series. And every single one of those had a different format, and every single one of those, they weren't wrong formats. It's just we're trying to figure out as a community what the go-to competitive format looks like for Mercenaries. And that to me is just incredibly exciting that all of these tournaments so far have been really fun and had really important strategic decisions to be made, but there's no clear winner, and I think that bodes really well.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I was
sure.
gonna say honestly, like, what if we can, like, do you guys have a personal opinion on kind of like what we've seen a couple different formats, right? So like
Hmm.
really the three major formats we've seen are the one that the first Mercenaries tournament did, that was you bring one deck, it's a best of three, and it's double elimination, but no sideboards.
Hmm.
Then the ATK events where you bring a lineup of six, and then you have a sideboard of three or four mercenaries that change from one event to the other.
Hmm.
And then the third type of format, basically, which was the Invitationals format, which was basically Conquest. You bring four decks, you get a ban, and then you play Conquest. It's a best of five. Do you guys have any personal opinions on if one of those seems really like the best option for you, or another one that we haven't heard of yet?
Thinking about it, I really, the one I think I liked the most so far was I really enjoy the concept of a sideboard. I think in a game like Mercenaries, it just adds an insane amount of like depth and decision making between games. Like when I played in the first round and got absolutely slaughtered, it was 100% because I had no idea what I was doing with these sideboard picks, and I kind of like metagamed myself, thinking I should switch in this Gruul because I anticipated them switching in a Diablo that they had in the sideboard because they brought a. It was like a really strange off meta comp. I think it was like four casters, two protectors, or something. I don't remember what it was exactly, but I was not prepared for that, and it really kind of threw me off. And definitely, I think I lost the first two, and then I kind of had to like adapt my strategy and change up the lineup a bit, and then I was able to win two more, and unfortunately lost the tiebreaker. But it was cool seeing like, all right, having to think on the fly, how do I use what I have here to counter what they have, and are they going to try and counter that or counter my counter? And it's just a lot of mind games, and you don't really get any of that experience on ladder. So I mean, sometimes if you're queuing into the same person, which happens,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of that, but like not
Right.
nearly the same extent as when you can like actively switch out from like a sideboard of three. So I really like that one.
I mean, I'm guilty of doing the same thing I do in standard, which is, you queue up a deck, you lose to its counter, and you immediately switch decks and re-queue. And sometimes you get lucky and you queue back into that same
Mm-hmm.
person, and then you can just kind of take them apart. Um, I think if I had to choose a favorite format, it would honestly be the coin concede format because it feels
Right.
a little that there is enough. Which, for those who aren't aware, it's bring six mercs. You have to lead that six in the first round, best of three, and then you have a three merc sideboard. But you're not allowed to switch out equipment, which I think I like, and not because it adds any strategic element or deck building element, but purely because it makes it more accessible to folks who maybe don't
Mm.
have as big of a collection. And you will hear me time and time again. I stand for two main things as we kind of explore Mercs and it grows. The first one is accessibility to casuals, amateurs, whatever you want to call the folks that didn't spend the first 2 weeks grinding out every single merc like I did.
No arrow
Um,
mental farming for them.
right, exactly. And the second thing is, come play with us, y'all. Like, you do not need a team of maxed mercs to compete. Wizard Beast, who beat me in the semifinals of the ATK Battle for the Bounty round one, literally had abilities that were not maxed, and I put a fully maxed team in front of him, and he ran circles around me. Th- yes, these breakpoints will matter at some point, but for a lot of these community casual tournaments, you do not need to have your mercs max. In fact, having abilities leveled up is probably more than enough. And so I think that format that Coin Concede is using, best of three, six in front, three in back, no equipment swaps, is the best one I've seen that's accessible.
Yeah, no, I think I lean towards that kind of general form the most, which honestly is, yeah. So that's basically also what the ATK event is, right? Where it's like lead six, you have a sideboard of three, but then it's basically just I think I was mentioning this to you even before the show, is that it's like what the first tournament was, where it was just bring one deck but with no sideboard. But it's the natural conclusion to that type of format, right? Like once there are more mercenaries, once people have more of a collection, you do just want the players want to be able to have a sideboard. Again, coming from Magic, Magic has one of the most goated formats in my opinion. Like sideboards are just amazing. Sideboards are so
Yeah.
cool. They're so cool. And if you can actually get away with it, like Hearthstone never really adopted it. Like obviously people talk about like Specialist is the like sideboard format in Hearthstone, but never really got the same traction that it did. It was never a majority of the competitive events, and it just didn't stick. But I think Mercenaries has a really good shot of having the sideboard option, and maybe like you said, for even from a TOing perspective, like not being able to swap your equipment is just so much nicer. Like
Very true.
not only accessibility, but just like people will. It's just annoying from moderating a tournament's perspective to be like, oh, sorry, my opponent swapped their equipment, but they didn't tell me which one it was first, or I didn't notice. And like, were they trying to pull one over on me? Like, just some of that weird stuff. Like, just taking that off the table is nice too, I think. So just like I would expect the future of the competitive format in Mercs to probably be something like sideboards, just because, yeah, it feels like Zombie was saying that you just have agency, right? Like you can just go, you play 2 games and go like, wow, I just got destroyed. How do I react to this? How do I just adapt? And like you said with Wizard Beast, Tangster is just like, you really don't need to have a fully maxed Merc. Like your matchup knowledge, your mind game potential matters so much more than this +1/+5. Like,
Oh yeah.
Don't be scared. Yeah, like you said, don't be scared. Play with people. Play ladder too. Like I was playing ladder without any max Mercs and it was climbing like very easily. Like don't just be spooked. Don't think that your collection is everything. It is truly just game knowledge, your own understanding of your deck, of your comp, of your like RPG guys. Like that's at the end of the day, that's all you need. And I think that's the fun part, so it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
And Mullahoo, I have to ask, do you think you're maybe a little bit biased because that format gives so much for you to talk about in the breaks between games and casting?
Right.
It is way better to talk about casting when you have the sideboards to mess around with. That's definitely sure. And again, I've been a caster in or related to basically every tournament that's been run except for the Coin Concede podcast. I'm not, or like in the listener series, and I'm not playing in that one either. So you guys will have a better insight from that side of like the super community, like league, right? Like the multi-week league, which would be really cool to see. But no, I mean, I think Mercenaries has an amazing future from a casting perspective, right? I think people saw it with just like Derek and Raven and Gia, who eventually popped up on the Mercenaries.
Oh yeah, Gia was incredible
cast
on there. She was like the highlight
Gia...
of the show for me for sure. You could tell how much she knew and prepared for that event, and it was just like, and she like explained what her thought process was like flawlessly. Like that was definitely. I hope we see more of her casting. Like I mean, she's gonna play too. She's obviously a player. That's why she knows it so well.
Oh yeah.
But like, I love that.
No, yeah, Gia's the GOAT, and I mean definitely. For just like some clout for the podcast, and as well as just like I wanted to keep it secret for while it was happening too, but we eventually then made it public. But I was one of Gia's testing partners for the Invitational.
That's awesome.
Which was so cool. It was so cool. And so like
awesome.
Gia just getting able, like she just showed how intricate and in-depth the game can get, and again she obviously has a great understanding of it. And the MAM deck that I've been playing a ton of with the Malf, Anduin, and Mukla with the Sylvanas and the sideboard, again, like I was in the call and Gia went like, wait a minute, what if we play Sylvanas with the Death Rattle equipment here, and now it just becomes like this insane control deck that has a tiebreaker at the top end that can beat the Anduin mirrors and stuff. And it was just, and then we ran away from it. And honestly, I think that was one of the best decks of the entire tournament to come out of it. Like China happened to have the exact same list, which was really crazy. Like when they put out the deck lists, that was so crazy to see that they had the exact same one. So good prep for them. But then the resubmission allowed other people to just like homogenize what everyone was playing.
Copy their homework.
Kind of bummer, but yeah. But no, the Invitational is amazing. Geo was awesome. Again, it showed from a casting perspective for sure just the longevity I think this game's going to have. So yeah, I think super exciting, and I think the sideboards are probably going to be the future.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with that. Sideboards are, like you said, with Magic and in other games, it's just they add such a level of mind games. Like I always think to the Pokemon background, and like I know we were talking about this earlier before the show with Mercenaries, like one of the new ones that got added with Eudora, being able to kind of switch your mercenary out or one of your mercenaries out. I know we had that ability in Brightwing, but it didn't feel like kind of fully realized there. But I feel like with Eudora, that adds like a whole nother element to like in Pokemon, switches are huge. Like, and certain abilities let you get off some damage or some good bonus effect before you get a nice switch out, so you can bring in someone off your bench. And the big difference is, though, in Mercenaries, you can't choose to just withdraw a Mercenary and throw out a new one and not attack for the turn. The only way you're getting Mercenary back on the bench is if you have some ability that does that. And I think there are only 2 of those right now, with Eudora and Brightwing.
Yep.
So I think we'll see more of that, though, because it adds such an interesting element, especially when you factor in you can use it on battle cries like her ability to summon a cannon or Mukla's big brother off Mukla and just kind of rebuy those effects. And so I really hope we see more of that, because that also, just like the sideboard stuff, it adds to that kind of additional mind gaming going on with like, oh, is my opponent going to withdraw and switch out to something that's a little bit better to counter my starting comp, that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, swaps just in general are, I think, have a cool future. And like we were saying again a little bit before, this is like when I think this is something that people are slowly realizing as they play Mercenaries, is that as 2-card combos off of the bench like Karen Diablo become really important, it becomes like a hugely skill testing point in the game to realize like, okay, do I double kill here or do I single kill to filter in parts of this 2-piece combo, right? Like there will be times when you can get a kill and you shouldn't go for it because you'll open up a weird breakpoint for you or your opponent's on a cooldown that you won't be on.
Yep.
Like we just are still fundamentally trying to understand how to best play Mercs, and
For sure.
I think things like that, as more new funky mechanics keep coming out, it might honestly be kind of hard to catch up with the best way to play, which is again just going to be great for the life of the game. But
yeah, definitely agree. It's really crazy, just like we were saying earlier, with not really feeling like you need to have that kind of maxed out team to go on the ladder with PvP. And it's true. Like there are so many games I've noticed in just climbing up the ranks where like your opponent can have better equipped or like fully maxed out stuff, but if they aren't playing very well, that +1/+5 really doesn't make that much of a difference. I mean, there are certain instances where it can be helpful in breakpoints, but it's pretty circumstantial, and it's I wouldn't say it's relevant for the majority of Mercenaries. So I just think that that's definitely something. And playing in some of these community events, community run tournaments, you also see a lot of other players don't have all the Mercenaries maxed yet because it takes forever. Like I've been grinding this mode since release for like a month, like pretty nonstop, and I'm like, I don't know, I think I'm over halfway. I just got my last guy to level 30 the other night, right after the balance patch hit. I think Scabs was my last one, but it just takes a really long time to get those mysterious strangers for the task 7s, and then if you have to grind out coins on top of that, maybe you grind some more tasks after, it just takes a lot of time. So, and we saw with the recent release with the mini set that I think, Mullah, you brought this up earlier, there's kind of like a little bit of staggered release element to it, because when we get new content, unlike Ladder, you don't just open your packs and go off to PvP to go play with your cool new stuff. You have to go level this Mercenary, and you're probably going to have to go grind out the tasks for it, and that's going to take some time. Like, even if you're going like as hard as you can on it, that's going to take a day, 2 days afterwards, and that's if you're going like full force at it. So I think we're going to see kind of an interesting, almost kind of staggered meta changes. Like even with the recent balance patch, which we're with the buffs that we're going to talk about in a minute here. I know I didn't have like tier 7 on either of the Murlocs, or I think my Cornelius was like level 15. So because I just wasn't using them in PvP, and that's really mostly what I play in Mercenaries. So it's really kind of, I think it's interesting to see, like, it takes a little bit longer to develop, but because of that, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting because it's harder to solve as quickly.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up the patch notes, because I'm like over here on the edge of my seat, like looking at the patch notes on my other screen. I'm so excited to talk about these. The fact that we already are getting not balance changes, buffs across the board, buffs. A month into the mode is
huge.
Absolutely incredible.
Huge.
So I don't spend the 30 minutes of our pod just running down these changes. Zombies dead. Are there any you want to just grab off the top?
All right,
Where do you want us to go here?
So I figured we just go from top to bottom, just as they are on the page here. Kind of go over, what the change is, what we think about it, and if we've seen this Merc kind of show up at all in any games we played post patch.
I like it.
I love it. So, Cariel at the top. An interesting buff, I think, but definitely not one of the most interesting. She got a little health buff. She's from 67 to 73, and it definitely doesn't look like much on paper when you're just looking at these patch notes. But 70 is a really important breakpoint for a lot of protectors in particular. I promise not to go too mathy in the first episode, but just know that she is going to end up being a little more survivable. She's now, a very viable option. And when we get down to Varian and Cornelius next, we can talk about why that is and why a human's comp now potentially becomes something you could run on ladder.
Yeah, I honestly haven't seen any more Cariel necessarily. Actually, the one Cariel that I did see also goes with another Merc that I'm sure we'll talk about a lot more when we actually get to them. But the just Seal of Light on Cariel to give the bonus attack. I saw a Cariel open with an Illidan, which was very funky.
That's spicy.
Yeah, as
I
just
like
kind
it.
of like a better taunt option to protect the Illidan than something like the newly buffed Cornelius or the Mutinous or anything like that. But that has the cool, like, she actually has synergy to bump up his attack when you carry Illidan getting a lot of attack. So that's really the only time I've seen new Cariel. But she was fine, but honestly wasn't necessarily being used for her health there. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, cool change, happy to see it, but I don't think we're going to see a whole more ton of her in the meta as a result of it, because, well, she's not a bad unit. I do think she's not just... She doesn't really set herself apart from a lot of the really powerful taunts that we're seeing right now. And, I mean, in some instances, like with that Illidan one you mentioned, you can definitely get some more bonus out of that ability. And I think if we see more kind of attack, like physical attack-based units starting to see play, maybe she'll be a little bit better. But she's definitely not, like, the most exciting of the changes that we got out of this bunch.
For sure.
But we'll
especially since she's free to play, right? Like she's kind of supposed to not be super duper strong. And again, from day one, she was only ever strong because she could taunt on turn one. They were
pretty much
only at release.
That was how I justified running her. It was like, all right, she taunts. That's good. Good enough.
Yeah. Although I will say, be careful with the low power level on the free to play, because who's free is Samuro.
Yeah, and he's not low power level. Quite the opposite.
More meta Merc right now, besides maybe Karen Diablo. But that's maybe a different topic of discussion. It looks like Cornelius is next, and we've got obviously a big speed bump on Hold the Front, as well as Blessing of Sacrifice. But I think more importantly, Cornelius now taunts on turn one, right? Because the Hold the Front no longer has cooldown.
Mm-hmm. That's a big change, really. And like another Merc that got changed here, Mutinous, it really just, having taunt on turn one, it makes, there's so much more potential for them to be viable, because that's kind of a big reason why the big protectors like Mukla are run, is because their ability to, he summons a taunt and he provides a taunt himself. So even though he can't get off his own taunt turn one, you have another taunt there to protect you, and it's just so huge with the huge presence of Samuro that we've been seeing in the meta. So I think it's really great that we're getting some more T1 taunt options, because I think it just allows for a lot more variety.
Yeah, I think Cornelius, and honestly, this patch had a lot of cooldown changes, which is basically always going to be the single biggest buff or nerf that you can introduce in Mercenaries, right? Like, Mercenaries is a game of, in a cool way, it's a game of small numbers and big numbers at the same time, whereas like Hearthstone is only a game of small numbers. Mercenaries is a lot of these big, like, 70s, 80s, 90s, where you could tweak those numbers by like 3 or 4 and it'd be fine, right? Like we saw Cariel get 6 bonus health, but the smallest, most impactful numbers of the game are the cooldown numbers, which are never more than 2, right? It's 0, 1, or 2. Any change can't go to 1.5, can't go to 2.3. Yep. It's an up or down by 50% of your number, 100% of your number. those changes are massive. And Cornelius, yeah, is the first one we see here that loses hold the front to taunt and heal. Used to have a 1 cooldown and speed 4, and now it's a 2 speed with no cooldown. You can just literally do it every single turn, and especially when we see these differences of going from 1 cooldown to 0, where it means all of a sudden something that couldn't be looped now can just be repeated every turn, is just another huge gameplay change. So whether or not it actually makes a difference in terms of making him playable is one question, but regardless, this I think is one of the biggest just on paper changes of the patch.
Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree with that as someone who got absolutely destroyed by Cornelius and Velen the other night. I don't remember who it was, but I queued into them like 3 or 4 times with some spicy new brews, and it did not work out very well because Cornelius, he has that passive that lets him take less damage, and then when you start combining him with Anduin, and they already have some natural synergy there because they're both humans, so Anduin's heal can actually heal Cornelius with his regular base 4-speed attack if Anduin's at full health, and then that scales the Anduin more, and it just gets really out of control, and he can be like a hard taunt to get through, and he's healing the other units every turn. So even if you do have some kind of AoE or caster ability so you can get around the taunt, he provides another avenue of healing for Anduin, which is exactly what Anduin wants to do, to scale up and kind of crush whatever opposing lead is out, and then just kind of keep it going with the Holy Nova healing up, scaling until it closes out the game. And Cornelius he seems pretty strong in a comp like that in place of Muckla, who we are seeing kind of take that place before for that T1 taunt.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say about Cornelius is you mentioned the human synergy. Don't sleep on that. Humans is a tribe that hasn't really gotten a lot of focus. People not really liking Varian, you're not seeing a lot of it. It usually ends up being a Frost or a Holy type of thing. But I queued into someone who was running that opener, that Anduin Cornelius Velen, and people forget that Anduin has 3 abilities.
Yep.
The Anduin's third skill, I'm totally blanking on the name right now.
It's like Holy Word or Holy Protection something, but yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Right. The one that takes the humans
take 10 less damage, right?
Humans take 10 less damage.
Yeah.
That my opponent popped it on my Chain Lightning turn, and Cornelius took 0 damage from a 2 boost Chain Lightning.
Wow.
Right? So you're hitting, was that 22 damage jump? Cornelius took 0 between his passive and between Anduin dropping
the protection.
Skill 3. Yeah. And
that's nuts.
I was flabbergasted. Don't sleep on that synergy, and definitely don't sleep on that Anduin skill 3.
Yeah, it's very strong with Cornelius for sure. All right, next we got Grommash.
I want to move on to Grommash because the next 2 are my favorite changes. There was nothing, when I saw these, this is where I was most excited. So Grommash got 2 big speed buffs, right? He had Staggering Slam at 4 and Battle Fury at 9. Now it's at 2 and at 6, respectively. And, Battle Fury is now playable. Awesome. I can now press that button and it doesn't feel bad. Staggering Slam is nuts.
Yeah.
This is absurd, and I have been breaking things left and right all week. It's amazing, and let me tell you why. You brought this up a moment ago. I think it was Zombies. There is currently, I think, 1 Merc that can taunt at speed 1 on turn 1. Right? Which means at speed 2, you are speed tying the thing trying to taunt you. And that is huge. Winning that speed tie, suddenly you have a viable turn 1 kill that can totally flip the game. This is the earliest coin flip I've seen outside of a mirror, like a Nature Sam mirror, that on turn 1 is going to objectively change the outcome of the game. And I haven't decided whether that's good or bad yet, but it's really exciting that you've got Grom who can now have some speed control that actually means something. Instead of going on 4, where the abilities you're usually trying to stop, a boosted Malfruit, a Cairn, Endurance Aura, have already gone.
Yeah.
If you're going on 4 speed.
Yeah, it's a huge change. It's really like I think this is one spot where like Mullah was saying earlier, like the number changes matter so much in this. It's almost like when when they change a card in constructed, it's always a much bigger impact when you're changing a 0 or a 1 mana card to a 2 or 3 mana card rather than maybe making something that's like 5 or 6 mana 7 or 8, just because it's literally doubling or tripling the cost, or in this case, having the cost. And Speed 2 is just such a big breakpoint, mainly for that reason you said before, just about that kind of stopping a taunt can totally just mess them up. Like they're relying on that taunt to kind of save their kind of squishier units, and without that, you can just totally kind of blow out their start, and then basically it's just eating a whole move, which, as we've seen, is very strong with kind of mercenaries like Varden, who when that death rattle goes off and they get the freeze, they're frozen for the whole next turn. So it's like we've seen, or kind of recently with Cookie, with the Karen change, sniping off the Karens, it's really huge when you can deny a character acting for the turn. Like, you only get 3 actions for a turn, assuming you don't have any other like spawns or tokens or anything. And if you deny one of them, it's just like that totally messes up your opponent's game plan. And I think Grommash is now a much more viable way of doing that, which is great to see.
Are you leading Grom with like Samuro and another Samuro triggerer? Who's your third piece there?
So I've been messing around with a couple, right? Rokara was my first instinct. Obviously, for the synergy, there's no trigger there, so if you do get slowed, it does become pretty backbreaking. But I've been trying, a couple of other things. Brightwing, actually.
That was my first instinct.
tested very well.
Nice.
Just for buffing things on the bench. The other one I actually really liked is running Brucon out in the front and stacking some nature damage, and then bringing in even Cookie with 1 or 2 stacks of that nature damage. Now you're sniping at speed 2 for 16 instead of 10.
Yeah,
So
that makes a difference
really
sometimes.
Things to play with, but I think just pigeonholing it into Samuro. I started there. I was thinking too small, and I think next week on stream I'm gonna reveal this, so I may keep it under my hat. If I'm too excited and talk about it later, we'll see.
Gotta save some surprises, right?
I'm not good at secrets. So, I'm sorry because I'm just blazing. I'm so excited about Jiraxis.
I was gonna say this is your other favorite.
Yep.
Yes.
Jiraxis.
Oh my god, because I streamed Demons the week before the patch, and that went really well, except for Jiraxis. You can actually demonstrably see the win rate.
Win rate.
Win rate. You can see the win rate drop on when Jiraxis is brought in. I actually had a counter on stream. But these buffs are incredible. So Fist not only got a speed bump from 6 to 4, but got a damage bump from 12 to 15. And as folks all over Discord were pointing out, one-shot Cookie Fish now. Oh boy.
True. I didn't think about that.
And then everyone was looking at this change. The change that kind of got swept under the rug was the Fel Infernal. Which went from speed 5 cooldown 1 to speed 4 cooldown 0, right? And remember, as Mullahoo said recently, those cooldowns, man, they matter.
Oh yeah.
And so suddenly, a turn 1 Fel Infernal to a turn 2 hard-casted Fist of Jiraxis, you are putting out a ridiculous amount of damage if you're running a full demon frontline. That's 4 triggers for 60 damage non-crit on the same target if you're running the T7, right? So if you get those True Strike Gauntlets, the Task 7 unlock for Jiraxis, they're all going to hit the lowest health target. And you will blow people up. He's still squishy. He's like Malf. You get him off, or he is going to ruin your life. And it's been really exciting being able to play with Rathorian, who was incredible pre-patch, but just didn't have anyone to back him up.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't have him out there with Diablo. You want Karen out there, and 2 fighters has really gone back and forth in the meta. So for the folks who have, maybe not had a chance to try Demons or Jiraxis, go ahead, run out Manaroth, Jiraxis, Rathorian, whatever you want in the backline. I personally have been doing Karen Diablo Cookie because it's very easy. There are some other things. Gul'dan works great there. Try a little bit of jank, you'd be surprised. I don't think this is jank anymore. We're getting really close to this being a viable, like, tier 2 synergy.
That's awesome. This is kind of a silly reason, but one thing I really like about that Fel Infernal change is lore wise, kind of like with the original Dirax's card, he's always you're always pressing that button, summoning an Infernal every turn. So I kind of like that you can do that with the Diraxis Mercenary, because it felt a little bit off to me that it's like I have to wait to do that. It's like he's Diraxis, that's what he does. So like it has nothing to do with balance, but I'm happy that it's buffed because I wanted Draxus to be more viable. I actually just maxed my Draxus the other day, but like I still haven't tried him yet because I'm still leveling the other demons up. But I'm definitely gonna try out that comp. That sounds super fun.
Yeah, I think he's now the only summon that has a 0 cooldown, right? So he's one of the only.
Oh, I didn't know
for
that.
For the moment, I think he's the only summoner that
That's
can
cool.
just go make a guy, make a guy, make a guy, make a guy, make a guy. Like stop, make me stop. Otherwise, I'm not gonna. Like that's powerful.
And they're scaling your Fel damage. Yeah. Like not only are they
the
threats,
just have
but
a
like
flat Brucon.
Yeah,
like it's like you cast a lightning bolt, but it just stays there, and it's faster, right? It just gets to be a permanent that has a Fel damage boost. That even the speeds of a lot of the other the demons that do have those Fel synergies, you can actually either control your speed ties to go summon an Infernal and then do a Fel thing, or summon a demon that matters not for the Fel, but instead for some of these demon synergies. And like the Rathorian is sweet, and we saw another buff to them, I think, too, in this patch.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
Even better.
That's exciting.
Is it Rathorian?
I think so.
I think there's an IA. Yeah, there's an eye hiding after the.
I've been butchering it for weeks.
It's okay. He's gonna hunt you down. He's a demon. He won't stand for that.
That's fair.
All right. Next here we got another human on this list. So we have Varian Wren. Basically, he got another big change with cooldown, retaliation going from a 1 cooldown to a 0 cooldown. And then it was also changed, so instead of just being after an enemy attacks his turn, attack it, now at max rank it is after an enemy attacks his turn, gain +5 attack and attack it. And I think this is such an awesome change. The cooldown's really big just because for an ability like this, it whiffs so hard if your opponent gets to attack before you get the proc off. And so I think it's good to have it at 0 speed, because otherwise it just, even at 1, where you're probably faster than a lot of things with certain speed ups like Malph's ability, it can get around that, and then it just becomes so much worse. And I really like the +5 attack addition. I think really one of the things Varian was lacking was kind of a way to scale him up a bit, so he's a little bit more of a threat going into like the mid game or the late game. Because he does have a lot of synergy with humans, and there are some other powerful humans out there, like Anduin and now Cornelius. So I am curious if we're going to see any more use of him, because I haven't run into any yet. But I definitely think he is much, much better with these changes.
Yeah, it's and this is going to be a larger topic probably for another podcast. Is how do you decide just by looking what mercs are potentially viable, and the best way to just glance at something and decide whether or not it's worth trying is, does it scale? If it wants to attack, does it have a way to increase its own attack? If it wants to cast, does it have a way to increase the spell damage, or really just become a ramping threat? Because you see a lot of people, they will stall out Anduin, because at the end of the day, he's a great support. He can get to absurd levels of health, but unless you're a protector, you're not getting hit very hard. And if Velen's not out there to ramp that holy damage, he's just going to keep tickling you until you concede, because he's got 250 health. With Varian having a way, to buff his own attack, I think it's great. Retaliation, personally, I tried, right? I gave it the old college try.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. There are and I think it's just this meta, right? In this meta, outside of Samuro, you don't have a lot of mercs that are swinging, right?
Yeah.
Using that attack keyword, which means I am swinging at you and taking retaliation damage. Attack is actually a keyword in mercs, and
I didn't know that.
there's
Yeah,
no
it's
current.
confusing.
It is, yeah. So if you mouse
Interesting.
over a skill, you'll see attack is bolded, and you'll see you get the little tooltip, kind of like you do
Oh.
right with any other
Yeah.
keyword in
Wow.
standard.
I didn't know that.
The problem with that, besides the attack piece, is there's no way to force it. It's very
Yeah.
not simple to play around, but it does limit, right? So, and I can already see Mullahoo smiling. I really can't wait to hear his thoughts on this. And the last thing I'll say about it is I did try it with like the most from a lore perspective, anti-synergy you can get. I had Garrosh and I had Varian on my front lines, and
That's what I was smiling at.
Yeah.
Yep, I was using Makgora to force an attack,
Mm-hmm.
which is the only way to do it, and it was fine, right? It was cool, it was awesome, it felt good when it worked.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Funny. Yeah, I mean, to me, I honestly, I have Varian. I have like this like loose tier list of kind of like which mercs were the ones that were most positively affected by these changes, because I think there is like a pretty like intense scale, like we saw with Cariel, where she got 6 health, and then we see someone like Jiraxis, where it's like an entire cooldown is lost, multiple speed changes, like multiple positive number changes. Like his percent change was much greater than someone like Cariel, who got a little bit of health, etc. But to me, I think Varian they lose an entire cooldown, right? Like they lose one of the most important numbers, or one of the best numbers to lose in that sense, is like those chains of just being slow. But yeah, I think when there are very few ways to manually trigger it, Varian just sits there as a really funky Samuro counter. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think the name of this patch to me was just like Samuro's a problem. I think there were when you just go down the list of either speed changes that went under double strike or went under mirror image now, so like even like Grom, right, with the slow that can now go under even mirror image. We see Cornelius that can taunt now. We can see Varian Wren, Varian's like retaliation, because before you used to need an equipment to make you get attack every time you triggered retaliation. But the problem was you kind of really wanted Charlemagne on Varian, because it's just a flat, like King Crush. You just get a huge amount of flat attack from their Task 7 equipment. It makes them kind of viable on their own. Before you had to make a decision, do you want to go for making my retaliation good, or just Charlemagne just take the flat buff? Now they just gave you an entire equipment on retaliation, and it makes it so you one-shot Samuro. If they play Samuro in their opener, and you play Varian in your opener, they just can't attack on turn 1. Like if you click retaliation, Samuro dies. Just straight up, it gets crit twice, and it dies. So to me, this was a weird buff where it came in a patch that was loaded with, again, like Mutinous taunt buff, Cornelius taunt buff, Cariel got better. Again, these slows got better. Just there's so many things that are just anti-Samuro. This is another one. But if everything is boxing out Samuro, then now you're not really getting the same equity on this buff, and now Varian just feels a little bit lackluster, right where we were saying exactly zombies. And I think, Tang, you too, we're just like, there aren't enough good humans, really. There aren't enough humans that can attack and kill you right now. So it feels a little weird, but it's a good change. I think it's makes the character better. But is it enough? I don't know.
Exactly, and I think, this is, again, I'm getting a little off topic here, but it makes me really hopeful for how Blizzard is going to approach balance changes, because instead of nerfing Samuro to remove him, they did a couple number tweaks, right? None of these are fairly large buffs to some of the mercs, but nothing really meta-breaking has been found yet. Granted, we're 2 days into the patch as of this recording, so I'm maybe expecting too much, but at the same time, it's nice to see that their first instinct is buff counters instead of nerf the problem.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth doing a little sidebar about that, because I really agree with that. This is actually kind of what I expected in terms of Mercenaries changes, because Mercenaries is a different game mode than Constructed. We've definitely seen, the Constructed team have a much more proactive approach with balancing decisions, which I think has been great and a really good thing for the health of the game. But with Mercenaries, the way the system works, it's not quite so simple in terms of, hey, if we change the number on this, what do? You give them a refund on coins? Well, those coins can only be used on that mercenary, so it doesn't really make. Or you could give them like coins that could be redeemed for someone else, but it's like a whole other solution you have to come up with because it just isn't the same as like getting dust for cards that you might not be using anymore. And the other thing is, it takes notably longer to grind up a mercenary. So like that, you get that extra kind of like feels bad element.
Shut up.
Where all right,
I think we were talking about the duplicate coin stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I think trying to implement something like the duplicate protection in standard. Mullahoo, you were saying that is something that's been done before, and it seems easy, right? Obviously, we're not developers. We can't actually say what the level of effort is, but as opposed to, trying to get something together like an exchange rate or a new type of currency, it very cleanly kind of gives you a chance to not worry about opening packs when you have everything.
Or just ever getting rolling coins and then being like, that's literally as if it did nothing. Like that was a blank spot. Why did I just open my I just opened my toy and it's literally empty? Like, what do you mean?
I can speak to that experience.
Why is that possible?
And it's actually why I stopped opening packs in the short term, just because like I have all the mercenaries, and like we said in the beginning, I do identify as a sea mammal in terms of I spend a bunch of money on Hearthstone. Like I'm definitely what you would consider a whale over my time playing the game. So once I didn't buy any of the Mercenaries PvP like pre-order stuff, any of that packs, because I didn't know if I was gonna like the mode. But once I found out I did like the mode, I put a bunch of money into it because I wanted to. I mean, I realized very quickly this was something I wanted to like start producing content for, because I felt a lot of overlap there from my favorite thing about Pokemon PvP is almost more than playing the game sometimes is just team building. And it's kind of like building decks in Hearthstone or Magic. Sometimes it's more fun building the deck than just playing the deck, because the potential is all there. Like you don't have to see it get stomped by whatever's meta. Before you play with it, it could be anything. And it's just, I think one thing, I know they did say the coin fixes and coin changes, that stuff's very much on their radar and something they want to get fixed, because like I wanted to get more of the golden portraits, right? And so I have most of the portraits for, at least for the non-legendary mercs. I think I have like almost all the portraits for them. I'm missing like one or two on like Eudora or Cookie or someone, but other than that I have all like the lower ones, and I have a handful of the golden rarity ones or the legendary rarity ones. But something that really annoys me is there's no way to like specifically get one you want. Like it's going to be, it feels bad if I pull a diamond mercenary, which is like beyond super rare, and it's for a character I have no interest in playing. And they did kind of acknowledge that and say, hey, we do have plans for like making it a bit more straightforward or easier to like for players to get what they want rather than maybe just grinding out coins for the mercenary, which I think is a great thing. Because it's just right now, like the place I'm in with it, even as someone who wanted to buy skins, once you start maxing out some of your mercenaries, a lot of these coins become useless really quick. And it's like, what's the point of me opening a pack now if I know that at least for this first year of Mercenaries, it sounds like the pack pool is just going to get updated with each release. So basically, the packs I have sitting right now, those are packs that are going to contain, assuming we get new Mercenaries next month with the expansion. Those packs, if I wait to open those will basically be like expansion packs, and that's awesome. But it gives me no reason to like open them right now, because the best thing I could get is a portrait. And the only portraits that I want, which I do really want, are some more of the legendary ones, but they're just so rare and there's no guaranteed pity timer on it. You can literally open like a 60-pack bundle and get not a portrait. It is possible. And it's like, that feels really bad to me as someone who's like okay spending money on cosmetics. And, you mentioned gachas before, and I'm not like a big gacha player, but I do know about those games, and generally they're pretty good, even though they can have sometimes predatory monetization. Generally they do have some kind of guarantee, well, hey, after X amount of opening, you're guaranteed to get something, like maybe not that specific character, but something of that like higher tier. And so I think it'd be great if we just had some more guaranteed ways of getting what we want. And they are starting to like do a bit more of that. Like we saw this week in the shop, they had some bundles, like one just for a random portrait, and then some people got different ones. I've seen a few different ones of like a portrait and some packs or a portrait and some coins. So I think it's cool they're doing that, but like I definitely want a more kind of direct way to like, because people are gonna have a favorite comp. Like everyone's gonna have like a favorite comp or a favorite unit they want to use a lot, and it should be more attainable to get your favorite skin for that one character you really like than just having to like open packs and pray.
Absolutely.
Mini rant over.
Yeah, no, honestly, like the very like last thing I want to toss in there before we hit up probably who's next.
Illidan.
I know we were just talking about some Illidan stuff. Honestly, my interpretation with the like hopeful future of you can craft someone that you want, or like an easier way to craft someone you want, is the Legends of Runeterra basically has this exact same precedent already in their game, where like your weekly rewards just give you and I mean, I guess Arena does the same thing, right, with like wild cards, where it's just like, give us a wild mercenary card thing where you can grind however many, get X number of bounties done, and you get a rare wild card, right, or an epic wild card or a legendary wild card, and then you craft your one merc, that you craft your one Pokemon you want, and then you can start playing your comp. Like I think that has so many precedents in so many other games. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that the game moves towards eventually, which would just solve so many issues for new players, where it's you can all in and get your one Alexstrasza. If you really want it, you can grind for a little bit and know that you're going to get that. I think that's going to be a huge thing for just like a new wave of the player base to kind of get added to. But like we said, these things, some version of almost everything that we're talking about, I'm sure will come to light. It's just a matter of when and how much tweaking it kind of needs once it then does release to kind of get to good numbers. But like we said, so Illidan, I think, right, is next up on the buff list.
Oh, I loved seeing this.
So Illidan got some very exciting buffs. It got 3 attack from 9 to 12, which is fairly huge, though it doesn't look like it. 12 is actually one of the highest base attacks a merc can have in the format right now. And then 74 health, getting, like we discussed, over that absolutely key 70 health breakpoint. And then we get to the biggest buff, which is taking another turn off that cooldown timer on Blade Dance from 2 to 1. Absolutely crazy that this can now go off on turn 2 with buffed attack. We talked about running in with Cariel earlier, or another merc that can buff the attack. And then finally, the Demon Shroud equipment, 10 less damage when attacking. Seems strong on paper. I personally have not had a chance to play with it enough to say whether or not it's a demonstrable change.
Yeah, so I've actually run into a semi-reasonable number of Illidans since the patch. Again, I only really played on the Tuesday and the Wednesday of the patch, so I got like a couple days in, but didn't see a ton of Illidan, but saw some. And to me, the biggest changes, I mean, honestly, all the changes are big, like you mentioned, right? Like, already Illidan was being considered as one of the mercs that had that kind of some of the highest base attack in the game, especially when you consider the fact that they just like have a natural like give myself attack when I attack buff on their first ability. But so getting another 3 attack on that is huge. Again, 33% buff or whatever, going from 9 to 12.
Giant.
So for the guy that tries to attack, and especially has their second ability is also a multi-attack and can be a triple attack if they take the equipment for it. So it's as if they're getting more than just +3 attack, right? Like compared to the average merc, they're getting more out of their attack on average. So every additional attack on Illidan is more than 1 point of attack, quote unquote. So that's a really big change to see. The +3 attack. And then, the cooldown from Blade Dance going from 2 to 1 feels kind of like we talked about, I forget if it was on this or not, but with Alexstrasza's Dragon's Queen Gambit, or Dragon Queen's Gambit, or whatever, where it's like a 2 cooldown, make a character punch themselves in the face ability, but just like a 2 cooldown is such a ludicrous cooldown in Mercenaries, and it seems like Illidan's Blade Dance might have been one of those abilities that kind of like is spooky enough that they just went with let's start it at 2 cooldown and then realized like, oh, it's making him just unplayable. Let's bring it down to 1. And now that it's at 1, you can just, like you said, safely open with it, right? Now it's something that you could never reliably wait on any merc to have a 2 cooldown ability come off while opening. But now Illidan can open as well as be on the bench. His playability really opens up. And with this Demon Shroud, that final buff, it's as if, honestly, I think the best comparison that I can make for this Demon Shroud now not being a 5-point reduction, but a 10-point reduction, is it's Black Soulstone. It's Diablo's Black Soulstone.
10 more health.
Right? It represents a kind of borderline calculatable amount of flat health gain over a series of turns. And we've seen Black Soulstone as an amazing precedent for competitive. That's basically what every single person is taking on Diablo. Maybe not even correct, right? There were some tweaks here and there. People were trying the Doom Charge one. People were trying just the flat Apocalypse one. They're giving them a shot, but when in doubt, surviving for another turn, as we were saying before, if you can steal an action or gain an action, that's game breaking, right? So in a way, all the Illidans that I've seen are taking this tank 10 less damage when attacking and kind of being like a weird Diablo variant, right? They get way closer to being a Diablo now if you just treat Blade Dance like a Fire Stomp. You treat Demon Shroud like a Black Soulstone. Kind of interesting.
I love this change. It's like this is probably tied for my favorite change. Like I was playing some Illidan today.
Really?
Yeah, I really like it because I'm definitely a little biased because the first golden like legendary portrait thing I opened was Illidan, so I was like, oh, I really want to use him, and like I maxed him and I tried him before the patch, and it was, I mean, my opponents were happy. They were gaining some nice MMR. But me, not so much. And I feel like these changes really do go a long way in terms of making him a much better unit. The buff to the attack is just really huge. He really felt like your opponent could kind of just ignore Illidan because he just wasn't that much of a threat. And now I think that the extra buff and attack is really big. The cooldown is obviously very big too, just because, like y'all said, if you lead with him, you can't rely on a cooldown 2 ability on a lead mercenary because there's a very good chance they get focused and die before they can get that off if that ability is like an actual threat to the opponent. So I've been using him. I don't know who originally brewed this list, but I found a really kind of like spicy list with the opener is Eudora, Varden, Tyrion. Tyrion's another one of the mercs that got buffed. And it's felt like surprisingly good. To be fair, I haven't run into like a ton of super meta comps yet because a lot of people have been experimenting right now. So like I don't know for sure how it does against like some of the more popular matchups like, you know, Shadow Samuro or the more recent like Nature Samuro, that kind of stuff. I haven't run into quite as much of that because everyone's kind of like experimenting right now. But I like having Illidan on the bench is really cool with Tyrion because if you run Tyrion's item where when he dies he gives that +8/+8, your backbench, for the one I run for that, is Illidan, Diablo, Karen. All 3 of those are mercenaries that can actually really leverage that +8/+8 in stats a lot more than like a caster could because they're actually getting physical attacks off, or in like Karen's case, he's also like being a wall, being a taunt, so the extra health, the extra attack, it's just very relevant on them, and I find those extra stats like to close out the game can make a big difference if you're running into opposing Karens and opposing Diablos because they'll end up being smaller a fair amount of the time. And then Eudora can enable those kind of like switching shenanigans so you can kind of get Illidan out earlier if needed, or Diablo or Karen if that's like a better kind of counter to the start. So I've been really liking this. Demon Shroud is the equipment I've been trying. I did initially, when I was first running him, I liked running the one that gave him more attack when he used his first ability, but I think that was because he just started at such low attack. So now that he starts at 12 and 13 if you have a max, it's like that's a much more respectable amount of damage that the opponent can't kind of ignore quite as easily if they have some casters on the bench. And the equipment's just really big for his survivability because you want to be buffing up Illidan, and with the Tyrion lead, you can actually you can get that Blessing of Kings off. If I find Tyrion usually survives a while because they don't want to kill him because of the death rattle, and he's not a huge threat on his own. The biggest thing scary he does is, you know, he shrinks a big attacker like Samuro. And so they kind of leave him alone, and then if you get the switch out with Eudora, then you throw an Illidan, you get that quick Blessing of Kings off, and then all of a sudden Illidan's a really big threat, gets an attack in, can then do his... is Blade Dance's third ability? Is that right? The one that deals... Yeah, okay. So basically then you can get his Blade Dance off, and getting it off on one cooldown lets you spam that more, so you can kind of take advantage of the fact that if you do scale up your Illidan, he's like way more of a threat, and he won't be dying quite as quickly because he won't take quite as much damage when he's attacking. So I really like this change. I'm really happy about it.
That list you mentioned, zombies, actually, that was Dallas.
Dallas, great.
Yep. Awesome streamer. If listeners, if you're looking for a really good PvP Merc stream to watch and you're already subscribed to Tangster and Mullahoo, definitely go check out Dallas. In all seriousness, though, one of my favorite streamers to watch right now. He and Rathorian are the ones that have been giving me some incredible ideas. And then just a quick kind of aside on the Illidan attack buff, he is now the third highest attack.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
He's tied with a whole bunch of people that I can't remember all of them, but I can tell you right now that Grohl currently has the highest attack at 14, followed by Kurtros at 13, and then you start running into the 12s.
That's more populated.
It is, and Tyrion got buffed to that point as well, and we'll get to him in just a second.
Yeah, so before we get to Tyrion, we do have Mutanus here, who I said Illidan was tied with my favorite, and Mutanus is probably the other part of that tie. Mutanus is so cool. Like, he's probably the one I've played the most with since the patch, and the big thing with him, Scaly Taunt, basically went from gain Taunt, take 3 less damage, to gain Taunt, take 5 less damage this turn. So that on its own, that's a really big buff. But the kind of the other buff that he got on him was it's for his equipment, Iridescent Necklace. Scaly Taunt makes this merc take 3 less damage and is immune to crits this turn. So that immune to crits thing is insane when you start combining it with that passive damage resistance, which this gives you more of. Like, I've had I've seen 1 or 2 nature openers where it's like you were saying before with the Cornelius, like, I had a Chain Lightning go off, or it was Chain Lightning, and I think it might have been a 2 Protector start instead of a Samuro start with Nature. I think it might have been Mukla, but there were some big Protectors threatening him, and he just ate the damage entirely, and I was running him in a Nature comp, so he's healing off with Malfurion and Brukan going off, and it's just like, and if they don't have a way to slow him to kind of mess up that turn 1 taunt, it's just really hard to get through him. Like, he's really just like this immovable object of a wall that unless you can kind of slow him down, like, most of the time I'm just spamming taunt with him because he's just keeping my other 2 mercenaries, which are usually more like threat heavy, like, nice and safe.
Yeah, and Mutinous is... We've seen a couple of attempts to get what I've been calling kind of off-class archetypes, right? A perfect example is Guff. That is a caster who plays a lot like a protector, one of the only casters that can actually swing at something with that attack keyword. Now we have Mutinous, who is playing as a protector, where he was almost in that niche, but in general you wanted a bulky red taunt out front, and the only reason you would choose Mutinous is because you wanted that Murloc synergy. That's out the window. And I'm actually excited to talk about Murlocs in general. We'll get to that more when we get to Murkai, but the fact that now Mutinous doesn't need Murloc synergy to be run, that he can be run in nature, that honestly he probably would go great with an Anduin lead. I think that makes him really powerful.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I was rating a lot of my, like, individual personal merc tier listing based on, like, how viable is this mercenary in a vacuum, basically, right? Like, it doesn't have to be jammed into, like, obviously the Murlocs are good in the Murloc deck, right? Like, the Orcs are good in the Orc deck, but the better mercs that tend to stand out, and you see this in competitive constructed formats in almost any game, is that the really good cards that tend to be staples are the ones that can be flexible, can go into the good stuff decks, can be kind of played mid-rangely, and that's why, yeah, I'm super excited to see more changes like this. Like, especially when Murlocs, like dragons, etc., for these under-supported tribes, you at least have to give them one or two that can be played outside of their tribe. Otherwise, you end up with like a whole dead zone of cards that are just unplayable without their synergies, and then they either have to be great together and then it's too easy and obvious, or they're just not good enough, and that trap is a really common one. So I love to see different mercs like this being able to escape that tribal trap, and I think, yeah, Mutinous has a bright future as another particularly colored turn one taunter.
Yeah, and I think that your point is really viable about the tribes really needing to stand alone if they're going to see play, or to have a critical mass of that tribe, like orcs, where you can, have a couple of them together and not really have to worry about, okay, I'm not running 6 orcs, so my comp is good. But now we have Mutinous and Cookie, where the Murloc tribe is starting to look pretty impressive, despite the fact that Murkai got a lot of testing weeks 1 and 2, and yeah, I think it's great to your point, Mullahoo, that now we have these mercs that are standing on their own without their synergies, and now we're looking at Mutinous and Cookie, who are both viable by themselves. And I'm going to leave that there, because we're going to go down to Old Murkai next, and everybody, I think, at least that I've seen in the Discords, has been saying, even with the buffs, Murlocs aren't playable yet. I am of the opinion that people are trying this wrong, and I want to talk about Murkai's buffs before I kind of sprinkle that secret onto our listeners. So, Zombies, you want to give us the Murkai buffs?
Yeah. So Murkai got one of the most amount of changes. Looking at all the different things that changed for him. So his Fel Navigator went from giving your other Murlocs +3/+5 to +5/+5. So that's a pretty substantial increase. That's his summon that buffs when it comes into play. Then Giant Fin went from 16 attack, 16 health rush to a 20 attack, 20 health rush. And then last but not least, his Primordial Fin equipment went from giving 8 attack to giving 8 attack and Divine Shield, which is, I want to say, the biggest of the changes, but they're all pretty impactful.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think that Primordial Fin actually makes it a viable choice. I have not personally tried it yet. I haven't really gone with the Summoner Murloc kind of archetype that you can really work in, and I'm curious to fiddle with it a bit more. But to my point a minute ago, the Murlocs are kind of being played like an all or nothing right now. Kind of how we tried Nature originally, right? Remember, like the first couple weeks at Nature, you had not just Melf, Brucon, but you also ran Lady Anacondra, you also ran Guff, some people even shoved in Brightwing, right? Anyone that had a Nature ability, you put all 6 in. And what's happened is that we found out you need 2, maybe 3 synergies there to be good, and then the rest you just fill with that good stuff. Same thing with Murlocs. So, listeners, here's this spicy thing for you to try. I'm still kind of brewing this list, but the initial stuff looks good. Throw out the idea that Murlocs winning involves Murkai letting a bunch of Murlocs swing all at once, right? Because your dreams get shattered really quickly by a taunt, and as we've discussed, there are a lot of early taunts that get under that 5 speed swing. Instead, pair it with some of the nature mercs, right? So do something like Malf, Brucon, Mutinous lead, and then have either Cookie or Morgul come off the bench first, ideally with Brucon still, so you have that nature damage ramped up. Both Cookie and Morgul have incredible nature synergies I think are being slept on. You see people trying to use Morgul's skill 2, the deal damage based on how many Murlocs you have. In my opinion, that's garbage. 7 speed, mediocre damage, and he's a very squishy merc. He's not going to survive long enough to do that more than maybe once. Instead, bam that S1, give everybody that 10 health, have Malf on the field to either heal an extra 6, or Brukan on the field where all of a sudden you're dealing 13, 16, 19 damage, and double that to protectors, and all of a sudden you've got a really tanky comp that is going to keep hitting you, and they're not going to stop. And then you can do something like bring in Murkai off the bench when you see that opening, when they forgot that he's probably back there, when there's no taunt or Karen's taunt is on cooldown, and you hit someone in the face for a whole bunch of damage. Give it a try. We're probably going to be playing it on stream next week, and I'm sure we'll end up talking about it on the podcast, because if I had to throw my extra Cariel coins to bet on something, and I have a lot of them, I would put them on Murlocs being the shake-up to the meta.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, my Murloc, my only like mild Murloc advice, I think, is that I think I saw a lot of people trying Murlocs, and I think people were loath to accept the triple Murloc openers from before, and I do think that they were better than people thought. I think a lot of Mercs are going to suffer from, they don't seem cool, or if they seem like it's too much work to level them up, people will literally just not try, and we just won't have the data points to actually understand if they're good enough. And the triple Murloc opener was fine. It did a lot of damage. It could one-shot a blue guy. That's fine. Sure. Deal. Kill a bad guy. And so now the Murlocs got individually better, and I think, just kind of as like a final point to me is that these Murkai changes just help with the flexibility of the comp. Like if you just start getting blown out one way, you can start summoning and it doesn't feel as bad. If you can keep ripping Finvasion, go for it. But now these buffs just kind of give a better mid-game option to Murlocs, where they would start to suffer as their tribe got picked apart. But now it seems like the help is nice. And again, I'm more than happy to have these 2-part, 3-part synergies like Tanks, you mentioned there. That was one of the biggest things to me in Mercenaries, was to realize you don't need 6 humans, you don't need 6 orcs, you just have to find the best 2 or 3, and most of the gameplay positions revolve around synergies of 2 or 3 at most, right? And so these kind of multi-part comps that are these kind of like 2-card Monties of like 2 Murlocs and 2 nature that can overlap a little bit, and then 2 something else. That's plenty. That's fine. And so things like that for the new player, that's gonna be important.
And almost as importantly, when you find those, suddenly they fit really nicely into a sideboard.
True that. True that. All right, so we got our last demon here, I think. Yeah, our last... our last demon, because Gul'dan is not a demon. So we have Rathorian, and he got a stat buff, so going from used to be 9 attack, 76 health, he is now up to 11 attack, 76 health, so a nice little 2 attack added on there. And then Hulking Overfiend, changed it so it went from being Rush, Death Blow, this enemy attacks the lowest health enemy, to now Battle Cry, attack the lowest health enemy, Death Blow, attack the lowest health enemy. So kind of like King Crush's ability, basically, which is a really cool ability, and I hope we see more of, because it's nice seeing someone who's focused on physical attacking having some kind of way where they can get around taunt, because I think that's very relevant.
And the thing that almost sucks about this buff is it's still distinctly his 3rd best ability, but not because it's bad, because Rathorian has 3 really strong abilities, and this is a Merc that I think has been slept on even pre-patch, because he was absolutely nuts in all of my demon testing. I actually ran him in place of Samuro for the Coin Concede round 1 listener series and reversed sweep with him on the field.
Very nice.
Like, it was incredible, the damage he can do. And I was actually watching one of Old Guardian's PvE videos.
Those are great.
He had an awesome combo where pre-nerf, was it Snowclaw was the boss that, like... the Ragnaros coins summons,
one. I remember that one.
Yes, summons 3 0/25 taunts that, buff him and then does some damage, right? So he brought in Rokara and Rathorian, and had Rokara use her buff ability, her skill 2, and that thing just started one-shotting totems. So if you do something like, do something crazy, like get Cookie out there, summon a couple of fish, suddenly you're just picking fish off, you're getting attack and health every time you do it. Rathorian has a equipment that every time a demon attacks, it gives them +5 attack. So now you're scaling attack from Rathorian and from Rokara. It might be a little too greedy, right? This is a 3-merc combo I'm talking about here, but this is back to Zombie's point earlier about it's just fun to team build in this.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Looking at these, changes to Rathorian was almost as fun as actually trying them out.
Yeah, it's great seeing a comp that definitely wasn't seeing as much love get some nice needed buffs, not just on one unit, but on multiple units. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Yeah, nope, Rathorian's sick. I haven't played much demon stuff, but their numbers are cool. The equipment that gives your entire tribe +5 attack every time you attack is a lot. That is a relatively unprecedented equipment, and now with that summons from Draxus being even more prevalent, yeah, I think Rathorian could definitely pop up. Another cool free-to-play merc, interesting design. Once more demons means more Rathorian stonks, so...
Yeah.
I'll send you my list for you, Molehumalohu.
I crafted a Draxus. He's level 1, but he's coming.
So we go on down to Rokara here.
Yeah,
we just got a couple of the boring buffs left.
Yeah, most of them were pretty straightforward for these last few ones, but that's good. It'll save us some time because we are running a little long, but that's cool.
A little bit, but it's the first one. We're kind of feeling it out, and
there's a lot to talk about with these changes.
There's a lot to talk about the patch, and for those who are listening, let us know which part of this did you like, right? What do you want to hear more of? But going back to Rokara, the Orc Onslaught, her skill 3, speed 7 to speed 5, takes it from feels bad to use to very playable, right? 5 is obviously middle tier for speed. However, it suddenly makes it so you are speed tying or beating a lot of that kind of second tier of moves, that tier of what I consider to be from 4 to 6 is that kind of middle speed tier, and getting under that is really important. I saw on like my first game of the patch, someone rolled out Samuro with Sash and Rokara, and you pop Sash. Now all of a sudden, if you're running a 3rd orc in your front line, you've got 5 orcs on the board. You're doing 14 damage per orc at speed 5, essentially, and it took my board apart, and I was just so... You love to lose like that.
Yeah.
You love to lose to the things you've never seen that are super cool.
It's great.
And Rokara has so many of those types of cool things.
For sure.
Yeah, Rokara even getting extra equity lately too. In the as Cornelius got buffed, Smite comes out. The Smite Cornelius Rokara combo is really funky with the rally to pump your Smite, and then your Smite goes crazy and attacks everything. No, it's again Rokara, just another in the I guess short but very stackable list of free to play mercs that are good. Like Zarella, Rokara now with the buff, Rathorian now with the buff. Again, obviously like Samuro, but Cornelius and Cariel, and just most of the free-to-play mercs are fine.
Yeah, you can do a lot of crazy stuff with just rare mercs, and at some point I will run a Pauper tournament. This is
yeah, that'd be great.
Like, I want to ban Mercenaries. I want to ban Task 7. That's another discussion.
Yeah.
But she's going to be a star in something like that. So
that format's gonna be really cool.
Down to Scabs and Tyrion.
Yeah, we can lump these two together.
Yeah, Scab's got a nice buff. He's up to 10 attack, 72 health. Again, getting past that all-important 70 health breakpoint we've been discussing. Tyrion going up to 12 attack and 69 health. Again, 12 attack puts him as tied for the 3rd highest attack merc currently in the format. And while that's not as impactful for him as it is for someone like Illidan, we got to remember that 2 of his 3 abilities are attack abilities. So you are now putting out more damage per turn than you were pre-patch, and that is not negligible.
Yeah, it's always good.
You just have more death blows.
Exactly. There you go. I've never gotten a Tyrion death blow. I will say that I have yet to
Not a good sign.
successfully get a Tyrion
It's hard.
death blow.
It's not the easiest. I've gotten like one or two, but that was probably in like the first week of playing when everyone was. You saw a lot of more Tyrion in the first few days. A lot of people were trying him out, and I do really like him in that Illidan comp I was mentioning before. I do think the death rattle buffing your backline and any other mercs you have around is actually really, really powerful. And you can kind of like, if you just are relentless about swinging in with him when, if there's a situation where his other abilities might not be that good that turn, you can kind of just like math it out so you know when your Tyrion's going to die and get that buff. And I'm happy to see it. Apparently, I guess these were his stats in like the closed beta, so I guess he got nerfed before release, and this is kind of just a revert to that nerf, and I think it's a good one. I think Tyrion's a really cool merc, and I'm happy to see him get a little bit more play now, hopefully. But still, change Blessing of Kings to 1. Please.
That's all I care about.
Just gotta get that in
kind
there.
of stupid with my Tyrion and my tier list being like S tier, and it's like, okay, he's just not. With Blessing of Kings having a 2 cooldown, he's just always going to be a little bit hard stuck. I don't know, hard stuck gold, but that's okay.
Yeah, or at least pigeonholed into that. I really want you to die quickly kind of space that a couple of the strong death rattle mercs like Velen have.
Mm-hmm. And we got our last
but
one.
not least,
Yep, Gul'dan.
Yeah, last but not least, we have Gul'dan, and this one, actually, I think this is one that a lot of people rated really low, but to my point earlier about kind of that middle speed tier, that 4 to 6, getting Siphon used to be at 7 speed, it now goes off at 6. Getting Siphon to 6 is, again, not negligible. And Gul'dan, I looked at him once, twice, 3 times before I tried him, because you look and you see, what is it? His speeds are like
He's
10,
so slow.
8, 7 pre-patch. He is so slow. But with Cookie, he's got 91 health. That is a lot of health that unless you've, for some reason, left Samuro on the board for 3 turns, no one's chunking through that quickly. And so I did find it was actually felt okay casting, a 10 speed, 20 damage Fel Blast. But Siphon Life actually speed tying with Diablo is pretty critical. Because, at least for me, I've been taking Gul'dan off the bench and using him as a heal for my demons, as opposed to trying to lead him. And by that time, usually there's a Cairn Diablo out, and if I'm coming in trying to get underneath an Apocalypse, it's because I'm trying to save a demon life. And any other time, I'll tell you, demon life's not worth saving. In this case, I very much would like Rathorian to keep living so he can keep hurting people.
Yeah, it seems like a good change overall. I mean, it definitely is one of those that can seem kind of a little unassuming at first, but I think, like you said, it's really big getting that. Going to 6 speed, that enables way more speed ties, and speed ties are really, really key things to know for certain matchups against certain mercenaries, and it changes the game from a position where my merc can't do anything to, hey, might be able to actually do something before my opponent gets their abilities off. So I'm definitely happy to see that, and I think I definitely agree that I think Gul'dan makes a little bit more sense off the bench, because he's kind of, you can use him almost like a late game tank to kind of give that sustain to your other demons that you're probably running with him.
Yep. And I really like the idea of a what I mentally refer to as a two-hander merc, right? The two-handed mace of mercenaries. It's big, it's bulky, it's slow, but if it hits you, it's going to hurt really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gul'dan has a spot just if only because of, like, the thing that I just keep finding myself always going back to is the fact that he's one of a very small cast of mercs that can have a heal dependent on the damage that you deal, and so you can actually convert your crits into more healing. That's like a relatively rare effect, and in my opinion, he's always most playable when you are really getting, like you said, Tangster value out of healing your demons with it. And I think it's, especially with the Fel changes, right, with Jaraxxus getting a buff, which incidentally gives Fel damage a buff.
Yeah, exactly.
Which then incidentally gives Gul'dan a buff. Gul'dan kind of sneaks his way into kind of at least just scooping up a little bit of the equity from some of the other mercs that got
For
buffed.
sure.
And I think, yeah, he's probably more of a, if you want to have a Gul'dan, if you have the sick diamond Gul'dan portrait, it seems like demons is the way to go over orcs. Orcs is really kind of like the talk of the town, maybe for week 1, day -5. But as orcs basically got I mean, Grom getting buffed was nice, right? But
Huge.
Oh yeah.
and that helps. And so the orc gamers, you're happy to play a new Grom, right? Now you kind of have like a second Thrall, and that feels okay. But yeah, I would say the Gul'dan feels probably most at home with demons, where you're just kind of trying to take advantage of like a lot of numbers, and Gul'dan having a lot of big numbers, even though they're slow, you can kind of get some value out of it. So yeah, I'm a fan of it.
And
Yeah.
I will say, and this is something that I had forgotten and then rediscovered recently, Siphon Life, right, that skill 3, is a shadow skill, which means we can boost that with Vol'jin.
Oh.
And I gotta say, that feels good. I will say,
That could be
Vol'jin does
neat.
not fit well into a demon comp.
Yeah,
It is
that's
very clunky. I don't recommend it.
too much stuff to fit in
However,
there.
Right. The one time I got to bring Vol'jin and Gul'dan off the bench at the same time, with Draxus still on the board, that was a blowout, and oh man, was that a blast.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
do any of the demons have shadow stuff really? Not really, huh?
Just
Not really,
Gul'dan, huh?
unfortunately.
It's all Fel.
It's all
Yeah.
Fel and fire, which again thematically makes sense, but
Yeah. Oh, that's
not
cool.
very-
I didn't think about that. Like, I mean, I haven't done it in a while, but I used to like running Vol'jin sometimes just as a one-off on the bench because he's just such a good fast revenge killer, or like quick slow. So I could definitely see like doing a little experimentation there because if you like lose 2 mercs and you can switch out both like Gul'dan and Vol'jin, that could be kind of cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you could convince yourself to not play Cookie, like Vol'jin, like you're saying, like Vol'jin was around, I think, a lot of the time as just, it was a sick individual merc. You could just play off the bench, you come in, snipe a Karen, snipe a whatever. But now, like, it seems like Cookie kind of took over the Vol'jin revenge killer role with the
I
fish
think so
feast
as
being
well.
actually just clean. And so that does feel a little tough. But yeah, I mean, maybe there's ever a world where you can get, I don't know, there's some like orc death knights in WoW's lore, right? Where we can get a shadow orc. And all of a sudden we're getting Gul'dan plus Shadow plus Orc plus Vol'jin. Now it's starting to come together, right?
That would be spicy.
One flavor nail on the head, and seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. I always forget Lich King has a shadow ability. His Siphon Soul, that shadow. And I had like one game or two where Vol'jin speeding that up was cool and relevant.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and so easy to forget on a merc like that because it's just like usually you aren't running him in shadow comp, so it usually doesn't matter. But it's cool how noticing like those kind of like schools of ability types like can really matter for certain comps and stuff.
And you can search those, by the way. If you go into your
Oh,
collection
cool.
and you type in
I didn't know
nature,
that.
anyone with a nature ability is going to pop up.
Very cool. That's
cool.
a good tip.
Yeah.
So normally, I think we would, do a little bit of section about the meta and all that, but I think we kind of covered a fair bit of that, like talking about all this, and like we mentioned before, like Mercenaries, it takes some time for, like, people have to level this stuff. Like, literally I didn't even play any PvP on Tuesday when it came out, because I was leveling my Murlocs, and I was leveling my demons, and now I've got most of them to a point where it's like, okay, I feel like I have the equipment I want, and I'm ready to go, but I feel like the broader, like, changes we're going to see as a result of that and the experimentation, I think it's going to take probably at least, like, this weekend and a good bit into next week before we kind of start seeing the real, like, kind of winners and losers of this patch. So
agree.
we'll talk about that more next week once we're seeing some more results and kind of what comps might be pulling a little bit ahead of the pack and making their way into the meta. But I thought a fun little thing to do to end here would just be bringing up something that we were either excited for this week or are looking forward to soon. That is not Hearthstone related, just like kind of a little fun thing at the end. For me, we talked about this in the beginning a little, but Pokemon Gen 4 has a very special place in my heart. So the remakes of Diamond and Pearl that are dropping the day this goes out, Friday, tomorrow. Basically, like, Gen 4 is such a special place in my heart because of like the online trading and Wi-Fi battling and all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to playing through that with some friends. Might do a little Nuzlocke challenge, upload that, could be kind of fun.
That would be fun.
and then eventually I want to grind up some Pokemon, do some Wi-Fi battling, because I've got the itch for that team building from Mercenaries, and I can't wait to go do some of that in Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's gonna be watching the Wheel of Time TV series that just came out on Amazon Prime tonight. They released it early. So as soon as we're done recording, I'm heading downstairs to binge the first 3 episodes
Awesome.
with my partner. It is going to be awesome. I'm so hyped.
Very sweet.
No, that's super exciting. Honestly, I'm going in the opposite direction, where I'm getting to go as the weather finally starts to approach a little bit too nasty to go outside in the East Coast where I am here. My girlfriend and I, along with my best friend from forever ago and his new partner, we're all gonna hopefully go over to Western Mass and hit up the valley again for
awesome.
a final bout out in the wilderness again before
the snow comes.
Really, the snow's just coming in.
Yep.
And tomorrow's us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if you find any good rocks and you post them, you have to show me what's inside Mullahoo. I can't just be left out to dry like that. You made me wait a whole night. And
sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying. I was talking about doing this podcast, and so I mentioned both of you, and my partner said, "Wait, Mullahoo, was that the one you tweeted about the rocks at?" I was so excited you did that. I needed to see what was. Did you? And so yeah, keep that content coming for us, Mullahoo.
I got you. Look, you see all the rocks over here? There's plenty of them. Don't worry, they'll keep coming. They'll keep coming.
Awesome. So just in case anyone does not know, where can our fine viewers here find you here on the internet?
Sure. So I am always hanging around the various Mercenaries Discords. You can find me in the Vicious Syndicate, the Coin Concede, and the HS Mercenaries subreddit Discords. Feel free to tag me at Tangster on there. And if you want to see me stream, typically I'm streaming Jank these days. May do a leaderboard push again. You can find me at twitch.tv/Tangster1922.
Sweet. Yeah, and then I'll be we're about to announce another schedule change, so I'm going to be streaming on slightly different days. It'll be updated over this weekend. But twitch.tv/Mullahoo. And then definitely Twitter is the best place that I'm going to be actually the most active. Any kind of stream updates, anything like that. Other ideas, mercenary stuff, leaderboard posts, all the above will be there. And then full-blown articles are on esports.gg. You can search either my name, all the Protector Guide, Caster Guides, Fighter Guide. If you guys don't have those yet for Mercenaries, I spent a ton of time doing them. I'll have to go update them with some of the new mercs and some of the new changes and buffs. But mostly Twitter, Twitch, Mullahoo. If you search it, it should come up.
Awesome. Yeah, those are some great guides. Definitely check those out if you haven't gotten a chance to yet. Obviously, this is going up on my channel on YouTube. We're going to try and get this on some traditional podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to work all that stuff out. Mullahoo said, Twitter is probably the easiest way to contact me. My name on there is same on here, Zombies Go Nom Nom. And I'm trying to do a little bit more streaming. Been very busy with a lot of stuff recently, especially with the videos and all that. So haven't got quite as much streaming done as I would like, but I definitely want to get more into that soon. And that is same handle as my YouTube, but the Z in Zombies, the second, at the end of Zombies, is a Z in that instead of an S. But that's going to do it for episode 1 here. This was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of this real soon. Love talking about Mercenaries, seeing how this meta develops, and we have some fun stuff to look forward to next month with hopefully some new mercs coming with that new expansion. But until next time, we will catch y'all later, and thanks for tuning in to The Fighting Pit. Peace.